Reach Freddy. Apple Orchard Race. By Abby Klein, illustrated by John McKinley. Chapter 1 Red Shirt Alert. Brillilin. Breerilling. My alarm clock rang. I grabbed the clock and was about to throw it across the room when I remembered that today was a special day. I put the clock down and jumped out of bed. I yanked off my pajama shirt and pulled open my t-shirt drawer. I started throwing shirts on the floor and muttering to myself, "Where is it? Where is it? It's got to be in here somewhere." I couldn't find it anywhere, so I ran into the bathroom. My sister, Susie, was in there combing her hair. She combs it for about 20 minutes every morning, like she's some princess. "Get out! Get out right now, shark breath," she screamed at me. "I'll be out in a minute," I said. "I just have to find something." "Well, why don't you put on a shirt, weirdo?" "I will as soon as I find it." "Find what?" "My red shirt." "What's so important about your red shirt?" "My class is going to Apple Hill Orchard today, and Mrs. Wishy said we should all wear something red." "What about your underwear with the big red hearts on it?" Susie said, laughing. "Very funny," I said. "I don't have underwear with big red hearts. Besides, you have to wear something red that everyone can see. People don't see your underwear." I started throwing things out of the dirty clothes hamper. "You can look for your shirt when I'm done," said Susie. "I don't have time, Sleeping Beauty," I said. "I can't be late for school, or I'll miss the field trip." I threw a few more things out of the hamper. By now there were dirty clothes all over the bathroom. I didn't see my shirt, so I started to run out when Susie grabbed my arm. "Hey, get back here," yelled Susie. "Get back here? I thought you wanted me out." "I do, but what about this mess? You know Mom hates it when there are dirty clothes on the floor. She is going to be really angry. You can clean it up." "Oh, no. That's your job, mister," Susie said. "You made the mess. You clean it up. Besides, I'm not touching your dirty underwear." "But I don't have time. I can't be late, or I'll miss the bus and the field trip. Please just help me out." "What's it worth to you?" asked Susie. I didn't have time for this. "Just tell me what you want," I said. "I get to use your handheld video game player for a week." "A week? Are you crazy? I play that on the bus every morning." "I know," Susie said, holding up her pinky for a pinky swear. "So do we have a deal or not?" I thought about it for 2 seconds, and then I held up my pinky. "Deal," I said as we locked pinkies. I really didn't want her to have it for a week, but if I had to clean up the bathroom, LD missed the field trip. I turned and ran out of the bathroom, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. "Good morning, Freddy," said my mom. "That's a very interesting outfit you have on today." My dad looked up from reading the newspaper and chuckled. "I'm pretty sure a shirt is required at school. It's not the beach, you know." I know, I said. "But I can't finish getting dressed until I have my red shirt." "Why not, honey?" said my mom. "Remember, my class is going to Apple Hill Orchard today, and Mrs. Wishy said that we have to wear something red. The only red thing I have is that t-shirt Grandma bought me for Christmas." "I have to find it," I said, jumping up and down. "I just have to." Okay, calm down," said my mom. "Did you look in your t-shirt drawer?" "Yes," I said. "I bet it's in the bathroom," said my dad. No, I looked there, too. Maybe it's in the laundry room, said my mom. I did do a load of laundry yesterday. Can you check? Can you check? I said, jumping around in my pajama bottoms. My mom left the room. You look like a monkey, jumping around like that, my dad said, laughing. And you smell like one, too, Susie said as she walked into the kitchen. Susie, that's not very nice to say to your brother, said my dad. Well, he is a stinky monkey, Susie said, sitting down at the table. Susie, said my dad. You need to apologize to your brother. Fine. Sorry, Susie said. I knew she didn't mean it, but I didn't have time to argue. I had to find that red shirt, or I was going to miss the bus. Mom, do you see it? I yelled. Just then my mom came back into the kitchen. Sorry, Freddy, it still needs to be washed. But I found Susie's red sweatshirt and your favorite shark t-shirt. Will that work? She asked, holding up the sweatshirt. Okay. Thanks, Mom. You're the best, I said, giving her a big hug. Well, Freddy, you'd better run back upstairs and finish getting dressed, said my mom. You don't want to get on the bus half naked. No. I laughed. That would be really embarrassing. I ran upstairs, put on my shirt and the hooded sweatshirt, and went flying back into the kitchen. Now I'm ready, I announced. Aren't you forgetting something? Said Susie. For your information, I am wearing underwear. You. That's not what I meant, Hammerhead. Look down. I looked down at my feet. I had on my fire truck slippers. Oops, I said, my face getting warm. I know you're supposed to wear something red, but if Max saw those, he might never stop laughing, said Susie, smiling. That would be an interesting trip to the orchard, in your slippers, my dad said. Oh yeah, I said. That was a close one. I'd better go change. I ran back up the stairs, 2 by 2. I got back down just in time to grab a breakfast bar and my backpack and head out the door to hop on the bus. Chapter 2. An Apple Surprise. When we got to school, our teacher, Mrs. Wishy, said, "You all are going to have a great time today. We're going to do lots of fun things at the orchard." Oh, yeah, said Max. Like what? Apples are boring. Mrs. Wishy ignored him and kept talking. We get to pick apples, see how a real cider press works, and eat cider donuts. They're my favorite. I love them, too, I said. They are so yummy. I can't wait to try them, said Jessie. I've never had one before. You always have such a good attitude about everything, Jessie, said Mrs. Wishy. Yeah, I whispered to Robbie. Not like Mr. Grumpy Pants over there. I pointed at Max. Max looked up just in time to see me pointing. I gulped. Oh no! The biggest bully in the whole first grade was not supposed to see me pointing at him. "Ely, get you later," he mouthed at me. I'm in trouble now, I whispered to Robbie. Don't worry about it, said Robbie. He just likes to act tough. But that didn't make me feel any better. When we get there, do we have to walk all the way up to the apple trees? Max asked. I've been there before, and it's a long walk up to the trees. I don't want to walk that far. Actually, said Mrs. Wishy, you don't have to walk at all. When we're ready to pick the apples, Farmer Bob is going to give us a hayride over to the apple trees. That's a special treat just for us. A hayride, said Jessie. I've always wanted to go on a hayride. I just love horses. You, said Chloe, holding her nose. Horses are stinky, and the hay is really prickly. You're just a prissy princess, said Max. No, I'm not. Yes, you are, said Max. No, I'm not, said Chloe, folding her arms and pouting. All right, you too, said Mrs. Whooshy. That's enough. Can I ride the bus up to the apple trees? Chloe asked. My mom told me to keep my dress clean today. It's brand new. My Nana just brought it to me from France. Why would you wear a brand new dress to a farm? Jessie whispered to me. Because you're Chloe, I whispered back. Jessie giggled. I forgot. She's a princess. Princesses don't wear pants. And they don't ride in hay carts, said Robbie. They ride in carriages. No, I'm sorry, Chloe, said Mrs. Whooshy. Everyone is going to go on the hayride. But. Chloe stammered. No buts. Those are the rules. And speaking of rules, what do you think are some important rules to remember today? Said Mrs. Whooshy. Jessie raised her hand. Yes, Jessie, said Mrs. Whooshy. Don't touch anything until Farmer Bob says it's okay. That's right, said Mrs. Whooshy. You have to listen to Farmer Bob and do exactly what he tells you to do. I raised my hand. Yes, Freddy? No screaming on the bus. Good. Remember, you need to use a quiet voice on the bus and stay in your seat. Anything else? Robbie's hand shot up. I know the most important thing, he said. Great. Tell us, said Mrs. Whooshy. You should always stay with the class and never walk off by yourself. That is an excellent rule, said Mrs. Whooshy. Why do you think that is so important? Because if you leave the group, you might get lost, said Jessie. Oh, that would be scary, said Chloe, pretending to shiver. I would not want to get lost in the orchard. What if they couldn't find you, and it got dark, and you had to spend the night outside in the dark all by yourself? Well, we don't have to worry about that, said Mrs. Whooshy, because no one is going to wander off. Right, kids? Right, we all said. Now that you have promised not to wander off, I'm going to tell you about a special surprise. Special surprise, we all chanted. Tell us what it is. Farmer Bob has set up a little treasure hunt for us. Cool, I said. Yeah. Way cool, said Robbie. Even Max was sitting up and listening. Here's how it's going to work, said Mrs. Whooshy. Farmer Bob has hidden a wooden apple somewhere in the orchard. When you are out picking apples today, you have to keep your eyes open for it. What does it look like? Asked Chloe. A banana, Robbie whispered to me. What does she think it looks like? It looks just like a real apple, except it's made out of wood, said Mrs. Whooshy. That sounds tricky, said Chloe. If it looked different from all the other apples, then it would be too easy, said Mrs. Whooshy. It might be a little tricky, but I know someone will find it. What happens if you find it? Asked Jessie. You get a prize, said Mrs. Whooshy. What? Said Max. An apple. No, said Mrs. Whooshy. You get $5. $5. Wow. That's a lot of money, we all said. So is everyone ready to go? Said Mrs. Whooshy. Yes, we answered. Then grab your coats and line up at the door. Chapter 3. Cheater, Cheater, Pumpkin Eater. When we got on the bus, Robbie and I sat down next to each other in a seat. Jessie sat right across from us. The minute Max stepped onto the bus, I whispered to myself, "Don't sit near me. Don't sit near me," but of course he had to take the seat right behind me. "Great," I whispered to Robbie. "Well, look who's here," Max said, leaning over the seat and sticking his face in mine. "It's baby Freddy." "Freddy is not a baby," said Jessie. "Says who?" said Max. "Says me," said Jessie. "Don't you remember he slid down the fire pole on our field trip to the fire station? Babies don't do that." "Right," said Robbie. "I didn't see you do that, Max." "Well, I've done it before," said Max. Just then Mrs. Whooshy said, "Everyone needs to sit down so that the bus can start moving." Max started to say something, but Mrs. Whooshy walked by and asked him to sit back down in his seat. The bus started to pull out of the school parking lot. "I'm so excited to go to the orchard," said Jessie. "I've never been to one before." "You're going to love it," I said. "It's so much fun to pick the apples right off the tree." "And wait until you taste one," said Robbie. "A fresh apple from the orchard is much better than one from the supermarket." Jessie licked her lips. "I think I can taste it already." Chloe turned around in her seat. "What are you eating?" "There is no eating on the bus. That was one of the rules." "For your information, Miss Busybody," said Jessie, "we aren't eating anything. We were just talking about apples." "Oh," said Chloe. "You know what's the best thing to make with fresh apples?" said Robbie. "Apple crisp." I said. "No." "Applesauce," said Robbie. "Every year my mom makes homemade applesauce with the apples we pick from the orchard." "I don't think I've had homemade applesauce before," said Jessie. "I'll bring you some to try," said Robbie. "It's delicious." "Well, my mom makes the best apple crisp with the apples we pick every year," I said. "In fact, one year she even won first prize at the fall festival for her apple crisp." "That sounds yummy, too," said Jessie. "Is it like apple pie?" "Because I love apple pie with vanilla ice cream." "It is a lot like apple pie," I said. "I like the apple crisp when it's warm and the ice cream melts just a little bit." "Hey, guys, can we stop talking about this?" said Robbie. "It's making me hungry." We all laughed. "I know what you mean," I said. "What should we talk about?" asked Jessie. "I know," I said. "How about the treasure hunt?" "That sounds so cool," said Robbie. "I think it will be hard to find the apple, though." "Why?" I said. "Because it is going to be really well camouflaged." Robbie is a science genius, and he always uses these big words. Could you speak English please, Einstein?" "What does camouflaged mean?" "It means it's the same color as its environment, so it blends in really well and is hard to see." "You mean like how the design on a butterfly helps it blend in with the flowers?" asked Jessie. "Exactly," said Robbie. "I have really good eyes," said Jessie. "I bet I can find the special apple, even if it is camouflaged." "Not if I do first," I said. "Dream on, ding-dongs," said Max. "You haven't got a chance." "Why not?" said Jessie. "Because I'm going to find it first." "Oh really?" said Jessie. "Yeah, really," said Max. Chloe turned around in her seat. "You're such a bragger, Max. The only way that you will find it first is if you cheat, and we all know that you are a cheater." "I am not," Max yelled. "Oh, yes, you are. Every time there's a contest, you cheat," said Chloe. "I do not," yelled Max. "Yes, you do," said Chloe. You're a cheater, cheater, pumpkin eater. Max jumped out of his seat and was about to grab Chloe when Mrs. Whooshy stopped him. Max, you need to go back to your seat and sit down right now, said Mrs. Whooshy. But... Right now, said Mrs. Whooshy. Max plopped back down into his seat with the help of Mrs. Whooshy. Now, what is all the yelling about? She called me a cheater, Max said, pointing to Chloe. Because he is, said Chloe. That's not very nice to say, Chloe, said Mrs. Whooshy. Would you please tell Max you're sorry? Chloe just stared at Max. Chloe, I'm waiting, said Mrs. Whooshy. Yeah, and I'm waiting, said Max. I'm sorry, Chloe whispered. What did you say? Asked Max. I didn't hear you. Sorry, she barked, and slid back down in her seat. Now, I don't want any more yelling, said Mrs. Whooshy, and, Max, you need to stay in your seat. Understand? Yes,